Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. And today we're diving deep into Indonesian herbal medicine.
Ooh.
It's a fascinating world, and we've got a really cool source today.
Yeah.
We're looking at a pitch deck from scientificlocal.org,
Okay.
and they are really aiming to kind of shake up this field.
Interesting.
And they want to use computational biology to do that.
Wow. Now that sounds complicated.
It does sound complicated, but it's actually really, really cool.
Yeah.
So basically, it's taking all this ancient wisdom about plants and remedies,
Right.
and then using high-tech analysis to actually see how these things work on like a molecular level.
So they're trying to speed up drug discovery by using computers to analyze these plants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it just makes so much sense when you think about it,
Yeah.
because they're taking this knowledge that's been accumulated over centuries,
Right.
and then applying these modern tools to unlock its potential.
And you said this company is based in Indonesia?
Yeah, they're focused on Indonesian herbal medicine.
Okay, so what's the story behind the company itself? Who's the brains behind this operation?
Yeah, so the founder is this guy named Agus Wahyu Budi Setiawan.
Okay.
And he's got this really interesting background. He's worked in tech, he's worked in business, and he's also got a deep understanding of Indonesian herbal medicine.
So he's kind of the perfect person to bridge that gap between the traditional knowledge and the modern technology.
Exactly. And what really struck me is that they're not just like some tech startup trying to cash in on a trend.
Yeah.
You can really tell that they're passionate about preserving this knowledge and using it to benefit people.
So what's the problem they're trying to solve here?
Well, Indonesia has this incredible biodiversity.
Right.
Over 30,000 plant species.
Wow.
And almost 10,000 of those have medicinal properties.
Really?
But get this, less than 1%
1%?
are actually being utilized by the industry.
That's crazy. So there's all this potential just sitting there.
Exactly. It's like this huge untapped resource.
So how do they plan to unlock that potential?
So their big idea is to create this centralized database of all these Indonesian medicinal herbs.
Ambitious.
Really ambitious. And they're partnering with BRIN for this, which is the Indonesian Institute of Sciences.
Okay, so they've got some serious scientific backing.
Yeah, and they're going to use computational biology to analyze all this data to look for potential new drugs.
So they're not just cataloging plants, they're actually trying to find new cures.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that they're not just going after any market.
Okay.
They're specifically targeting the anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, and antiviral markets.
Smart move. Those are huge global markets.
Yeah, they're thinking big.
Yeah.
The global market for anti-inflammatory drugs alone is projected to reach almost $400 billion by 2031.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
And they're aiming for 10% market share within 5 years.
That's a bold goal.
It is a bold goal.
So they're going up against some major players in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, but, they're not naive about the challenges.
Yes.
They know it's going to be tough.
So what are some of the hurdles they're anticipating?
Well, for one thing, they're relying heavily on high-performance computing, which is expensive.
Sure.
These systems are essential for computational analysis, but they don't come cheap.
So they're going to need a lot of funding to get this off the ground.
Absolutely. And another challenge is that the initial data in BRIN's database might be limited.
Right, because a lot of this knowledge about these plants is probably still undocumented.
Yeah, it's passed down through generations orally.
Exactly. So it's not like there's this neatly organized spreadsheet they can just plug into their computers.
And then on top of all that, there's the whole regulatory landscape for herbal medicines, which can be a real nightmare.
So they're going to have to navigate regulations, protect traditional knowledge from biopiracy,
Right.
and compete with these established companies with massive resources.
It's a David and Goliath situation, for sure.
Sounds like that. So how do they plan to fund this ambitious venture? Are they seeking investors?
They're looking for 1 billion Indonesian rupiah in the first year.
Okay.
And that's primarily for computational resources, their core team, and administrative support.
So they've really broken it down for potential investors.
Yeah, they want to be transparent about where the money's going.
Makes sense. And what about their long-term financial strategy?
So they've laid out a 5-year investment plan totaling 5 billion Indonesian rupiah.
Okay.
And their revenue streams are going to come from licensing their discoveries to other companies,
Okay.
strategic partnerships, and potentially developing their own herbal products down the line.
So they've got a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Smart. And what about exit strategies? Have they considered those?
Yeah, they thought about things like acquisition IPO or further strategic partnerships.
So they're really thinking long term.
Yeah, they're not just chasing a quick profit.
It's impressive they've really thought this through.
But what I'm really curious about is,
Yeah, what's the big question here?
well, can they actually pull it off?
Right.
Can they overcome all these challenges and actually make a difference?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, and I think the answer is maybe.
Maybe.
But, even if they don't achieve everything they set out to do,
Yeah.
I think this is a really important story
Why is that?
because it shows that there's this incredible potential in traditional knowledge systems,
Right.
and that maybe we need to start looking at these systems with fresh eyes.
I agree. There's so much we can learn from these ancient practices.
And who knows, maybe this is just the beginning of a whole new era of drug discovery.
An era where we combine the best of both worlds.
Exactly. Ancient wisdom and modern science working together to create a healthier future.
I like the sound of that.
Me too.
So what's next for scientificlocal.org?
Well, that's what we're going to dive into in the next part of this deep dive.
I can't wait to hear more.
So stay tuned.
It's really amazing to think about all those medicinal plants out there
Right.
just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what else is out there.
Absolutely. Like, what other secrets are hidden in rainforests or in these traditional practices?
And are there other cultures that have this kind of knowledge that we could tap into?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, we're just scratching the surface here.
But, even with all the potential, I still keep thinking about the sheer scale of what they're trying to do.
Right.
I mean, they're talking about analyzing thousands of plants.
Yeah, each with its own unique chemical makeup.
So how do they even know where to start?
That's a great question. And that's where the computational biology really comes in.
Okay, so it's not just about randomly testing every plant they can find.
No, not at all. It's much more targeted than that.
So how does it work?
Well, they can actually use algorithms to target specific conditions,
Okay.
like inflammation or cancer.
Right.
And they can look for compounds that have the potential to interact with those pathways.
So the computers are doing a lot of the heavy lifting here.
Yeah, it's like having a superpowered search engine for medicinal plants.
I like that analogy, so it helps them narrow down the search and focus on the most promising candidates.
Exactly. But I'm also curious about their partnership with BRIN.
Yeah, me too. What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, I'm imagining it's a pretty close collaboration.
Right.
BRIN probably provides access to their existing plant databases
Okay.
and their research facilities.
Makes sense.
And of course, their scientific expertise.
And scientificlocal.org brings the computational power and the business know-how.
Exactly. So it's like a perfect match.
It does sound like a win-win situation.
But I'm also wondering about the more practical side of things.
Like what?
Like, are we talking about scientists trekking through the jungle, collecting samples,
Yeah,
and then feeding that data into computers?
that would be pretty cool.
It would be cool.
But I imagine there's probably a lot of data that's already available.
Yeah, you're right. BRIN already has a vast repository of knowledge about Indonesian flora.
So a lot of the initial analysis can be done using existing data.
Exactly. And then they can use that to guide further exploration.
So it's not just about rediscovering ancient remedies. It's
Right.
about combining that knowledge with modern technology.
To create something truly innovative.
I like that. So they're building on what's already there, but taking it to the next level.
Exactly. But, all this talk about innovation and discovery makes me think about the potential risks, too.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, what if they discover a miracle cure,
Okay.
but it turns out that the plant it comes from is really rare or endangered?
That's a good point. They can't just go around harvesting rare plants without considering the impact.
Exactly. And that's why sustainability is so important.
Absolutely. They need to find ways to either cultivate those species
Right.
or synthesize the key compounds in the lab.
So it's not just about the science. It's about the ethics and the environmental considerations, too.
It's a lot to juggle,
It's a really complex puzzle.
but one with potentially huge rewards.
And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating.
We often think of science and business as being separate worlds,
Right.
but this company is trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah, they're showing that you can be driven by scientific curiosity and a desire to create something commercially viable.
It's inspiring, actually.
It is. And speaking of commercially viable,
Yeah, let's talk money.
how do they actually plan to make money from all this research?
Well, they've identified a few key revenue streams.
Okay, like what?
One of the main ones is licensing their discoveries to larger pharmaceutical companies.
Okay, so if they find a promising compound, they can basically sell the rights to develop it into a drug.
Exactly, and that makes a lot of sense.
How so?
Well, developing and marketing a new drug is incredibly expensive and time-consuming.
Right.
So by licensing their discoveries, they can focus on what they do best, which is the research.
And the computational analysis?
Exactly. They're like the scouts finding hidden gems.
Yeah, and then they partner with others to bring those treasures to market.
I like that analogy, but licensing is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right. They're also really big on strategic partnerships.
What kind of partnerships?
Well, it could be anything from collaborating with other research institutions
Okay.
to working with universities or even traditional medicine practitioners.
So it's about building a network.
Exactly. And for a relatively small company taking on such a huge challenge,
Yeah.
they need all the help they can get.
Makes sense. So they're not trying to do it all alone.
No, they're building a team, a community.
And what about their long-term vision? Where do they see themselves going?
Well, their pitch deck actually hints at a few possibilities.
Like what?
One option is acquisition by a larger pharmaceutical company.
So they could get bought out,
Yeah, it happens a lot with startups.
especially in biotech.
And it would provide a significant return on investment for their backers.
Right. And it could give them the resources to really scale up their operations.
But that's not the only path to success.
What else are they considering?
They've also mentioned the possibility of an IPO.
Going public.
Yeah, which means offering shares of the company on the stock market.
That's a big step.
It could give them access to a lot more capital.
But it also comes with more scrutiny and pressure to perform.
Exactly. Higher risk, higher reward.
And what's the third option?
Well, they also talk about expanding their strategic partnerships on a larger scale.
Okay.
So basically becoming a consultant or a service provider for the pharmaceutical industry.
So leveraging their platform, their database, their expertise.
Yeah, they could become the go-to experts for companies looking to tap into the potential of Indonesian herbal medicine.
It's a niche market, but it could be a very lucrative one.
But at the end of the day, it all comes back to that initial question.
Can they actually pull it off?
Can they actually deliver on their promises?
It's a big gamble for sure.
And there's so many factors that could make or break them.
Like what?
Well, we talked about the technical challenges, the financial hurdles, the regulatory maze.
Right.
And let's not forget the competitive landscape.
It's a tough industry.
It is so, it's a big question mark.
But you know what? Even if they don't achieve all their goals,
Yeah,
I think just the fact that they're trying is really inspiring.
I agree. It's a bold vision, and it's pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
And it's making people think differently about traditional knowledge systems.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Maybe there's a whole world of undiscovered remedies out there.
Just waiting for someone to unlock their secrets.
That's an exciting thought.
Yeah, it really is a gamble.
Oh, absolutely. A lot could go wrong.
So what do you think is like the biggest roadblock they're going to face?
Well, we talked about that high-performance computing, right?
It's expensive.
Super expensive. And not just to buy.
Yeah. You got to maintain those things.
Oh, yeah. It's a constant upgrade cycle.
Like you're always chasing the next best thing.
And it's not just the hardware either.
No, you need the software.
The people who know how to use it.
The whole ecosystem.
Exactly. It's a big investment.
And even if they have all the tech, there's still the issue of the data itself.
Right. A lot of that traditional knowledge isn't written down.
It's like word of mouth passed down through generations.
So how do you teach a computer to understand that?
Right. It's like trying to explain a grandmother's recipe to a robot.
There's that nuance, that context.
That's where BRIN comes in, I guess.
Yeah, the researchers have that deep understanding.
That goes beyond just the raw data.
It's like they're the translators.
Between the ancient wisdom and the modern technology.
That's a good way to put it, but it makes me think about the ethical side of things, too.
The biopiracy issue.
Exactly. How do they make sure they're not exploiting that traditional knowledge?
It's a tough one.
It is, because on the one hand, they need to protect their intellectual property.
Right. You got to make sure they can profit from their discoveries.
But they also can't just take that knowledge without giving back to the communities that hold it.
It's about respect and fairness.
Exactly. You can't just put a price tag on centuries of tradition.
So how do they strike that balance?
Well, one thing they emphasize in the pitch deck is partnership,
Okay.
involving those communities in the research,
Giving them a voice.
sharing the benefits.
That's really important.
Absolutely. It's not just about extracting information.
It's about building relationships.
And honoring that cultural context.
That even if they get the ethics right.
There's still the whole regulatory hurdle.
Ugh, the FDA.
Oh, yeah. Getting a new drug approved is a long and expensive process.
And for herbal medicines, it's even harder.
Different countries, different rules, different standards.
It's a maze.
And they'll need to do clinical trials to prove that these remedies actually work.
Which takes time and money.
So yeah, they're facing an uphill battle.
It sounds like it.
But you know what? Let's just imagine for a second that they pull it off.
Okay.
They find a cure for cancer using an Indonesian herbal remedy.
That would be huge.
Would change everything.
It would show that we need to be open to new ways of thinking.
That ancient wisdom can still teach us things.
And it would be a huge win for Indonesia.
Putting them on the map as a leader in natural medicine.
I love that idea.
And think about the ripple effects.
Yeah.
More investment in research, more collaboration between scientists and traditional healers.
More respect for indigenous knowledge.
It could spark a whole new era of discovery.
Not just in Indonesia, but globally.
Exactly. It's exciting to think about.
It is. But, you know, it all comes down to this.
What's that?
Can they actually do it?
Can they translate this vision into reality?
That's the million-dollar question.
And only time will tell.
But you know what? I have to give them credit.
For what?
For even trying.
It's a bold vision.
It is. And they seem to have a really good grasp of the challenges.
And they've got a solid plan.
Plus, you can tell they're passionate about this.
That makes a difference.
It does, because sometimes that's all it takes to change the world.
A little bit of passion and a whole lot of hard work.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, on that note.
Yeah.
I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It really does. And you know what? I learned a lot today.
Me too. It's been fascinating.
So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep an open mind.
Because you never know what amazing discoveries are waiting out there.
And who knows, maybe one of you will be the next to unlock the secrets of nature.
Maybe we'll be talking about your company on a future episode of The Deep Dive.
That's right. So thanks for joining us. And until next time, happy exploring.